My name is Domagoj. Today's talk that I'm going to do is about web data extraction, so web scraping, automating the data acquisition part from the web. A quick slide about me. My company is called Pontis Technology. It's a Croatian company which specializes in development solutions as well as AI solutions. My team is, of course, the AI team, and my function and my team is called Customer Delivery Manager, which means that I manage or monitor projects within my team, but I also take part in the implementation process of projects. I'm specialized in this stuff that I'm going to showcase today. So the agenda for today, we're going to go through the definitions, through the theory that you need. It's one slide in total. Then we're going to go into the legal stuff, the whole methodology, how to stay compliant, how to stay polite. And at the end, we have a cookbook, so a quick tutorial, what you need, how the workflow goes when you're constructing a scraper, and tools, so various tools which you can use to do the job. So from a data expert standpoint and from a web dev standpoint as well, because of course this is a web dev, primarily a web dev conference. So regarding the theory that you need, there are two main definitions which you can always find regarding web data extraction, which is an umbrella term which covers both. So you have web crawling and web scraping, and they form a continuous cycle, which means that you first construct the crawling part, where you crawl the websites that you need, so web domains on a certain server, and then web scraping is the part where you extract the data with an HTML parser or via automated browsing. We'll see more about that later. So it's an iterative cycle and continuous cycle where you start, for example, from a home page, you collect all the links, and then you follow those links, which means you crawl further, and then whenever you visit a site, you extract the data, which means you scrape the data. It is usually an HTML document, of course, and then you need a parser to parse through the document and extract the target data. Of course, the question being, why should you extract data? Why should you know how to extract data, how to do the web scraping part? The main two, I would say, use cases for it, and the main two I was previously covering were the lead generation use case, or sales prospecting, as some say, where you collect leads, of course, from various websites for your business. And the second part being the price optimization. You have some products listed on your website, you have competitors, and then you want to get intel about how your competitors compare to your prices, of course. And yeah, we've talked a lot today about AI, about machine learning models, generative AI, LLMs, but there would be no AI without data, of course. So you need data, you need quality data, and you need lots of data to train your models. And of course, web scraping could be a solution if you need extra data from the web. And of course, whenever you have something that you need to automate, a repetitive task which can be done within the browser, you can always do that with tools which we will cover later. So regarding the methodology, of course, we need to cover the main question. And the main question I was asked, I believe 4 times yesterday on the speaker's dinner: is it legal? Scraping has historically been a gray area for regarding legality, and there were various lawsuits that were happening throughout the years, where someone sued another company or individual for breaching the terms of service and scraping stuff that they shouldn't. And there isn't a conclusion, as each quality question as each quality question has a quality answer. It should be, of course, it depends. And as I said, there were various different lawsuits, but probably the most famous one being the LinkedIn one, LinkedIn, of course, is notoriously hostile towards scrapers, as probably many of you already know. And there was the famous HiQ lawsuit against LinkedIn. LinkedIn blocked HiQ, which collected different data about employees on the platform. And then LinkedIn countersued because LinkedIn being LinkedIn. And at first, web scraping was legal. The US court, I don't know which one, I don't know the legal part of that, but the US court decided that it was legal, but then the whole decision was overturned 2 years later, and then it was still a gray area, nothing has been really decided, and the answer is still it depends. But it depends on what you're doing with the data, and of course how you're acting when you're extracting the data, which we will also cover with the mechanisms in a few slides. So the web scraping policies. This is from a paper which is over 20 years old, but it's still very relevant regarding web crawling. It's called Effective Web Crawling by Carlos Castillo, and there were four policies that he described when you're doing web scraping or web crawling solutions. Selection policy, which means what sites should you extract, which are relevant, which are not, which also sitemaps can help with that. We will also cover that. Revisit policy, when will you continuously and when will you again visit the site for new information. Also sitemaps usually have information regarding that. Parallelization policy, which means how many concurrent and parallelized scrapers will you have and how will you coordinate them to do the job. And of course the most important one being the politeness policy, which means how to stay polite when you're crawling, how to not overload the server, how to not breach the terms of service, and so on. So these 6 mechanisms are the ones that are most important regarding the politeness policy. The first one that probably most of you have heard of is the robots.txt file, which stays on the root of the server. It should exist, of course, for every web server. And then you or your script as a web crawler should check the robots.txt, check the rules, and check if you are allowed to crawl through the site, which sites you are allowed to crawl and which not, and if you need to have some delays, which we will also cover in the crawl delay part of this. So it is standardized. It's called the robot exclusion protocol, or REP, which is pretty simple. You have user agents which usually are asterisks, which means for all the bots, and then, or maybe it's just only a certain bad bot is excluded, but it's usually disallow root, disallow nothing. So disallow everything's forbidden or everything's permitted, and vice versa. So you also have allow everything and allow nothing. So that's the same thing, works in the same way, and usually you have simple rules. Maybe 2 or 3 sites on the server are forbidden, everything else is fair play. This is how it looks like, for example, on our site on pontestechnology.com/robots.txt. You can see an automatically generated robots.txt file which says disallow nothing, which means everything is permitted, and you also have a sitemap which is automatically generated. We will talk about the sitemap later. There is also one example how, for example, a web shop, when you're doing price intelligence, and when you're or in this case when you're analyzing how price intelligence platforms are doing, then this is a Croatian site. I believe it's Croatian, nabava.net, which does the comparison of different products, and you see how that looks like. So everything else is allowed, but these sites you are not allowed to scrape. For example, comments on products, and usually you are not allowed to scrape searches. So the usual methodology for them, so for sites, is to forbid everything that's connected to the search. So you cannot, as a web scraper, reroute the search of a site to your own site. And of course, the most famous example regarding the forbidden ones is the LinkedIn one, which has a big disclaimer and a big comment at the beginning. The notice: the use of robots or other automated means to access LinkedIn without the express permission of LinkedIn is strictly prohibited. And then you have all sorts of rules for the bots that have been whitelisted, but for us common people and common scrapers, everything is forbidden. You have to use the API, which is a bit complex to set up and of course pricey, as you can assume. The second thing that you should look for, of course, is the terms of service, or terms and conditions, whatever you want to call it. For example, the Booking.com one. Booking is also famous for lawsuits, etc. And Booking.com states you're not allowed to monitor, copy, scrape, crawl, download, reproduce, or otherwise use anything on our platform for any commercial purpose without written permission. Which means, of course, you can test it out, you can use it for academia, but if you're gonna do something commercial with that for your own business or something like that, it's mostly forbidden. So you should always check the terms and conditions, or terms of service, when you're doing a comprehensive scraper on a different site. Or of course, always the easy way out is to use the external service, or the external API of the service. Crawl delay, many sites do have it. It's always advised to do minimal crawl delay if it's not stated, so do not overload the server, especially if you're doing thousands or tens of thousands of requests. So a second to 2 or 3 seconds might be suitable when you're scraping something, especially if it's not crucial for it to be fast. But if you have it in robots.txt, you should follow it. So this is how it looks: crawl delay 6, which means between each 2 requests that you do on the server, you need to wait for 6 seconds. And you have a variation of that, which is called the request rate, which is a bit rare nowadays, but it's pretty much the same thing, but it's stated differently. So within 1 minute, you're allowed to do 10 requests, which isn't the same as 6-second crawl delay. You can do 10 requests and then wait for the entirety of that 1 minute, but it's the same stuff when you scale it into 1 hour or 2 hours of crawling. User agent, of course, you're probably all familiar with what they are. They identify the crawlers, the scripts to the server when there is traffic. And of course, when we browse the web, we also have our user agent. When you do the scraping part, if you're gonna be polite, and you should be polite, then you should always identify yourself. So do the form where you have the name of the bot, maybe some contact address or something where the administrator of the site can contact you if you're doing something wrong or if you're overloading the server. But usually nowadays I see people spoofing the user agent, which means that they set the user agent of the script to something that looks like a web browser user agent. You also can do that. It's not entirely illegal, but it's ill-advised. So you should be polite. You should identify yourselves when you're doing the scraping part. This is one famous example, ChatGPT.com. So from OpenAI, they used lots of user agents. They were name dropping everyone within their robots.txt, which means that they disallowed all the competitor LLMs and allowed everything else, or allowed different parts. But they just named anyone who should not be lurking around their site. Sitemaps, of course, being the indications to the web scraping scripts or web crawling scripts, which sites are relevant, which sites are important on the server, which sites do get updated regularly. So if they are updated weekly, monthly, daily, how much of a priority do they have, and when did they last update the site? So specific date, so you can check when is the last time you've scraped the site, and when is the time or date when it was updated, so you can update if needed. Those are the two sites. I believe both are Croatian shops with beverages, but yeah, they have schoolbook examples of sitemaps. You also have, for example, on pontistechnology.com, you have the sitemap which has the XLST part, where you have the whole graphical interface. Then you can go into post sitemaps, paid sitemaps, personnel, portfolio, whatever. You have it pretty organized, of course, compared to the primitive ones where you just have the XMLs. Some sites nowadays also have TXT sitemaps, which means just a list of sites which exist on the server. Those are the most primitive ones. They are rare, but mostly you'll see such predefined, pre-filled sitemaps from Yoast, SEO, and stuff like that. Visit time, also very rare nowadays, and it's also advised to always scrape at night to not overload the server when it's at its peak, when people use the site. It's rare that you can see within robots.txt such a visit time parameter, but it's always advised to do it by night. So regarding the privacy part, the data protection part, we have various laws, various regulations that are in some sense connected to this. I have two examples of laws which state something connected, not similar, not connected to web scraping, but connected to data in general and to unsolicited marketing mails mostly. The Croatian law, which is called Zakon o elektroničkim komunikacijama, it's it's almost the same thing in Macedonian. Almost every country on the planet has a similar clause regarding the unsolicited sending of marketing emails, and it may be connected to scraped emails. So if you've scraped emails and then email addresses, and then you're going to use those email addresses to do marketing, it may be forbidden. But web scraping per se is not forbidden, is not in the red, but still in a field that's not covered by the law. But we have to comply to the legal regulations which cover the data privacy part and protected information about people. So the European GDPR, the cybersecurity law, like the one in California, the CAN-SPAM Act, and so on. So especially you have to take into account where the site that you are scraping, where that site is located. Regarding and of course, yeah, if you're scraping some personal sensitive information, you should always anonymize it if it's not relevant to you. So if you're just scraping everything to fill in to train an ML model on that data, maybe you do not need that personal information, so you feel free to anonymize that, and it would be advised. Knowledge prerequisites, of course, I do not have to tell you anything about this because you have this knowledge, but web scraping is of course mainly about selectors. So CSS selectors and XPath selectors, which you will probably use to select those certain fields that you need to scrape, that you need to extract data from, and of course extra techniques which are always good for working with text data. Regular expressions, when you just have a dump of plain text which you need to extract some information from that, regular expressions or regex is still a powerful tool nowadays to extract such data. For example, email addresses from a plain text extract. And of course, if you need to post-process the whole data. Regarding the status codes, of course, you have knowledge about this, so we won't go into details. But when you're scraping, of course, you have mostly two categories of status codes. Everything is okay, so 200 or something went wrong, you're on the wrong place, you're forbidden to scrape. So 400 something, when when it's you, not me. So when there's a problem with the script, and of course, if you get something in the 500s range, then you should maybe wait. You should maybe wait for the server to go back up. Of course, there are some challenges when you're doing the web scraping part, the web data extraction, automation part, whatever you want to call it. There are various anti-scraping measures. For example, when you're scraping something you should not be scraping, for example, you're scraping a site that has an official API, and they do not want you to scrape, then you'll encounter something like this. So Cloudflare or something similar will block you, and they will say that you've exceeded the number of requests you can make, which is usually 0 for them. But yeah, there are different techniques. You can rotate proxies. You can play cat and mouse with such sites, but usually they will win in some way, and sometimes that way are legal repercussions. So you should be careful with that. And of course, when you encounter something like that, when you encounter a block like this, so captchas which can block your web scraping script, you of course can use captcha solvers which are on the market, but some people develop their own scripts which are modules to solve captchas, so computer vision models or something like that, to click on the traffic lights wherever. But still, in the end, you will encounter more and more problems. So maybe the solution is to go find the API, or just find maybe a proxy API company which serves the data from that site. And of course, the question regarding scalability. When you're scraping stuff, the scraper works, and then 1 week later it doesn't work all of a sudden because something changed in the structure of the page. Usually the problem is, of course, they updated the site, and you've targeted only the specific fields within the web structure of the HTML document. So the problem being, of course, you should develop another script or modify the existing script to solve that problem. But nowadays, also some companies, I believe Zeit and Bright Data are the two higher up companies which do such stuff. They are developing AI-based scrapers, or some call ruleless web scrapers, which means that they do not have specific rules regarding the fields. They have AI modules or LLMs, usually that decide which part of the data is relevant and which not, regarding your natural language query. So what to use for scraping? The first thing that you should check when you check a website, of course, maybe you can find the internal API. It is usually either blocked, so you'll encounter a Cloudflare block, or it's obfuscated and hidden, but usually you can find it under developer tools, network fetch, and then you can simulate the traffic that the web browser does, and then you'll get that data. But yeah, usually I would say 80% of times it doesn't work. So maybe you should check the external APIs. Maybe if you want to scrape a Google search of something, then maybe you should think of, yeah, maybe Google has an official custom search API, and maybe it has a free tier, maybe it will suit me, or maybe I will have to pay. So of course, Scraping Dog is also another great example of a proxy API. They, for example, offer LinkedIn profile info, so you're offloading the whole process of scraping to them. You're getting the LinkedIn data from them, and you do not have to go through the whole process of getting whitelisted for using the LinkedIn API. And yeah, this is probably the most important slide I would say for the web scraping toolset. Regarding my perspective, so as a data expert, I usually work mostly with Python. So it's usually, if it's a static site, so statically loaded content, then you have requests. You do a get request or maybe you use URL-lib or something like that, something that is integrated, and then you use parsers like LXML or Beautiful Soup, usually Beautiful Soup, to parse the content to get info that you need. In JavaScript, it's the same. You can use fetch or Axios to fetch the data, so to do the request part, and Cheerio or JSDOM to parse the data which you fetched. In Python, there's also a tool called Scrapy, which is pretty good. It's developed by by the company called Zeit, previously known as Scraping Hub. It's a beast of a platform. It's Python only, so only in Python you can use it. But it's pretty powerful. Maybe not that flexible for a newcomer, for someone that is just starting, but it's very powerful. If the content is dynamically loaded, then you can try using Selenium WebDriver or Playwright or Puppeteer, something like that, which can be used to automate all the actions which you can do as a human actor within the browser. And there are also various no-code solutions, be it APIs that serve some data. So Bright Data, Zeit, Oxylabs, and Firecrawl are probably the most popular examples. And ParseHub, Octoparse, there are different graphical user interface solutions where you just drag and drop and click. You do not have to have any programming knowledge. So Beautiful Soup 4 is the most famous example in Python. It's the most beginner-friendly module if you're starting out in Python with web scraping. You get the request with requests or URL-lib, and then you just process the request with Beautiful Soup. You then use find or find all and use CSS selectors or different kinds of IDs or classes to locate the elements which you need, and then it's over. You're done with the scraping part. Pretty straightforward, but of course it has its drawbacks. Maybe it of course parses only static web pages, so if you have some dynamically loaded content, it might be not fully suited to do that job. Then we have Scrapy, as I said, the tool or platform or framework. It's, as I said, it's a beast. It does everything. It has all those mechanisms implemented, and it has a steep learning curve. You have to construct, for example, we have the Code to Scrape, a demo page where you can practice scraping. You have to construct such spiders, as they call it. So the spiders are classes which you construct, and then they go through the URLs, scrape everything, and collect the data. And it has parallelization. It has all sorts of mechanisms, but it's much harder to get into, and it may be overkill for some projects. If you're just gonna construct a simple scraping script of 20 lines of code, maybe it just might be a little bit of an overkill. But it has the Scrapy shell, which is a great tool if you want to practice different kinds of selectors on a website. Protego is also one module of Scrapy, which is probably the best robots.txt parser in the market. You should not parse the robots.txt by yourself because it's not a very good concept. But Protego has you covered, so it can get a URL address as an input, and then it just tells you regarding the robots.txt that it read, if it's allowed to scrape it or not. Pretty good tool. I believe it's also only available in Python, but you have also for JavaScript you have different alternatives, different modules which you can install to do the same job. Selenium WebDriver is my choice, my personal choice to do the web browser automation. You can also use Playwright, which we will cover in the next slide, but of course web browser automation tool, which means anything that you can do within the browser you can do with your scraping script. So simulating various human behavior, like clicking on different elements, navigating through the page by scrolling or something like that. Of course it's much slower because it loads everything that you see as a human user. You can also use headless mode, which means that it doesn't open up the whole browser and you can do it in the background. It might be a bit a bit faster. But if you're gonna use the fastest solution, you should probably use Playwright, which for some cases is more suitable than Selenium. It's a bit of a new kid on the block, which is bizarre to say because it's 5 years old already. But yeah, comparing to Selenium, which has a bigger community, a bigger history, and is much more suited for legacy code, Playwright is a bit of a new kid on the block, but it has a rising community. It's very popular nowadays, and it gets the job done in a similar way as Selenium. So whatever you use, it could be suitable. It could be suitable to get the job done. One big advantage towards Playwright regarding drivers is it doesn't need a driver for each web browser that you're simulating, so it's much easier to integrate it, for example, in a I don't know, cloud function or something like that. You do not to manage the executable, which is the driver for the web browser itself. So to compare, if you're gonna use, if you're gonna target some statically loaded web page, then Beautiful Soup plus requests or the equivalent in JavaScript will do the job. Scrapey, if you're gonna construct a project which will be 90 or 95% scraping, so a fully fledged scraping project, Scrapey is probably the way to do it. And Selenium WebDriver or Playwright, of course, if you're gonna target some dynamically loaded content. So the cookbook, to end things off on, this is how you should target the whole thing. So this example I will show you is from the What the Stack webpage. So with the agenda, the two different examples are how to do it statically. So how to, for example, extract information about the sessions and about the presenters, and the second part, how to go into each page, click on some stuff and extract data. So is it a single page or do you need to crawl is the first question. The second question, are you allowed to crawl? Is it a robots.txt file which permits crawling, or is it restricted? Then you develop a crawling strategy. How are you going to do it? Maybe it's a recursive strategy, or you just collect everything, do a list, or you have a sitemap. Then you do the right click and then inspect element. You go into developer tools, locate the stuff that you want to scrape, and just get the CSS selectors or XPath selectors from that, so you can build a scraper. This is how it looks in Python in Beautiful Soup. It's a pretty simple example, so you just need around 10 lines of code to scrape all the presenters and their session names from the web What the Stack site. It just locates the H3, so H3 heading and the links with the sessions, and that's pretty much it. And for the Selenium WebDriver part, you need to manage you also have the WebDriver Manager module, which does the managing executables for you, for managing different kinds of drivers for different web drivers. And then you have to do the same stuff, but in a different way, where you just find elements by class name, tag name, by something, and then you input the class, the ID or something like that, the selector which you need to have to target something. So this is of course how it looks like. It should start by itself. As you can see, Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. Of course, Selenium is originally used to test web applications, but in this case we are automating the process of extracting different so the about pages about each presenter on the web What the Stack conference. And yeah, in the end you'll just get the data that you've seen. It does it by itself, so it clicks and navigates through all the sites, and then you get the data in a similar fashion as the static example. So this is regarding the examples. One recommendation I also have for you is site that the company that I mentioned. They have two sites which you can do anything on. So everything is permitted, even if you destroy the site. I believe they will be cool with that. So they just constructed those two sites to experiment on, for especially if you're using Scrapey, books to scrape, which has different kinds of fictional books, and the one that I showed previously, so quotes to scrape, both pretty great sites to experiment on when you're building different kinds of scrapers. This is also a workflow to end things on, how it looks like. So you should define the strategy, check the legality, see if there's a paid API or maybe a free API which you can use to extract data with. So in that way you can see if it's legal or not. Then you proceed, either proceed with caution or just start a fully fledged scraping problem. Then you see if there's a hidden API. If yes, maybe you can use that API. If not, you should see if it's a static site or a dynamic site. Then you choose the right tool for the job, and then you store the data which you have extracted. To summarize everything, of course, the main lesson here being be polite, and the site which you are scraping will also be polite to you. So check the robots.txt, check the terms of service, be polite, use scroll delays, and so on. And yeah, Beautiful Soup probably is the best tool in Python if you're using if you're scraping static sites, and if you're scraping dynamic content, of course, Playwright or Selenium will do the job just fine. I believe this is it for the presentations, and for the presentations in general for this stage. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now, or you can contact me by LinkedIn, carrier pigeon, whatever you want. Thank you very much.